Okay, so today I'm going to be replacing the valve cover gaskets and PCV gasket and hoses for my W220 S430. This has the M113 engine in it. I'm going to show you guys how I'm going to do this. So first we'll start off with parts list. You need 2 valve cover gaskets. Part number's right there. That's for the other one. I apologize about the wind, it's very windy out today. Here's some connectors. This is one of the hoses. It's another like 3-way hose. Some screws. Another hose. And this one doesn't have a sticker on it, but it does have a Mercedes part number there. And this is for the secondary air injection system. This little 3-way hose right here. I'm probably going to wind up replacing that, just because I'm going to be in there. And then here's the gasket maker that you need for the PCV covers. This is the Loctite brand, 5900. Alright, and then you need some tools. Got a rubber hammer, metric socket set, metric Allen head set, 1/4-inch drive. What else? You're gonna need a torque set with E-Torx bits. Look like that. Some brake parts cleaner, and that should be about it. If I use any other tools, I'll let you guys know, or you'll see them in the video. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and show you the disassembly of the air cleaner and removing the coil packs. Get those out of the way. Alright, be right back. Alright, so remove these air ducts, just pull back. Lift up, and get with the front part out of the way. And this cover you pop up in the front, and pull up on the sides and gently pull it back. And the air cleaner you just lift up. Alright, and then these are the coil packs we're going to remove, 4 on each side. Looks like we've got our Torx. The T30. I'm going to disconnect these first. The clips for the connectors, oftentimes they break off because the heat, they get very brittle. But hopefully there's enough force from the gaskets on these to keep them in there. If I have any trouble, I'll have to replace the harness. I did the spark plugs a few weeks ago. I was going to do the whole job all at once, but I noticed I was missing that gasket sealer. so I needed to place an order for that and wait for it to come in. But I'll show you removing this side, and then we'll skip the other side so you don't have to watch that long video. We just want to remove them out of the way. Let them hang down as long as your manifold isn't hot. I only drove this car a few hundred feet to the shop, so it's not hot at all. But if your car is hot, then it might be worth taking the spark plug boots off so you don't burn your coil packs on the exhaust. The manifold's right down here when I'm putting these. These out of the way, be careful with them. Alright, so I'm going to do the other side, and then we'll pick up with removing this valve cover and disconnecting everything else off of it. Okay. So the next step is going to be removing the oil dipstick tube and the transmission oil dipstick tube. Here's the transmission one, and here's the one for the engine oil. There's an E10 bolt down here, and this one looks like a maybe 10 or 12 millimeter hex head bolt. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I will be right back. After that, we're going to start on this PCV cover right here. We're going to take out the bolts here and then pop it loose. Alright, got the two dipsticks disconnected. Now I'm going to go ahead and start with this PCV cover and take out these small bolts first. These two small bolts you shouldn't reuse. The factory original ones are aluminum. They don't suggest reusing them. The replacement ones I showed you are steel, so they are reusable. That's what we'll be replacing here and on the other side. I'm going to go ahead and remove this PCV hose. It actually doesn't look to be in terrible condition, but we're going to replace it anyways because we have the parts. I'm going to remove these two E10s. This was a T25. Remember, the long ones connect to this valve cover, this PCV cover right here. You see how long those are? Alright, now the reason I did this cover first is so that I can hit it with this rubber hammer to knock it loose rather than smacking this valve cover with it off the car all over the place. So we're just going to tap it, see if we can't get it to come loose. Might need a little more persuasion. So let's help this block of wood here. There we go. So that's what the inside looks like. You see this gasket maker here. I'm not sure if this is factory original or if somebody came in here later and put this in. I mean, there's really no way of me telling, but it looks kind of a little bit sloppy, a little bit too much gasket maker on here. But I'll go ahead and set this aside, get the valve cover off, and then clean them both up, get them ready for reinstallation. And the valve cover should be fairly simple. You just follow around the outside of it. There's these E10 bolts, just take them all off. That's it. There really shouldn't be anything else to do to get this valve cover off. I'll go ahead and take these out and then I'll cut back in. Alright, so we got all those bolts removed. And now we're gonna just tap the valve cover gently to get it to break loose. And here we are. And we'll just coerce it out of here. There's the inside of the valve cover. This one's not terribly dirty or built up. I've definitely seen worse. Okay, and then the old gasket is still on here, so we're gonna gently remove it. And try not to get anything in the engine. This is pretty clean because I did spray it down with compressed air and some brake cleaner when I did the spark plugs, just so I could identify where it was leaking from. Here's the old gasket. I mean, it's not terrible. It's not cracking. Well, it is cracking a little bit. Yeah, right there. Let's see if you can see that. Yeah. So it's time to replace it. This car has 155,000 miles on it. And I got it around 100,000, so I don't know if gaskets have been replaced or any of this work has been done before. I have no idea. It looks pretty clean in there. I always use Mobil 1 synthetic oil with this. You can tell it definitely makes a difference, because I've seen some of these that are pretty nasty and gummed up. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and start cleaning these parts up and getting them ready for the new gasket sealant. I'm going to go ahead and clean off the head surface area here and get it ready for everything to be put back together. Alright, so I got the valve cover cleaned up. As you can see here, I got the gasket in place. On this side, I just took some sandpaper and lightly scuffed up the surface of the mating surface where the gasket sealer is going to go. It had this kind of corrosion and stuff on it. I didn't want that because it would interfere with the gasket. But I also did these 4 holes here. Just do that. And on the cover side, I scratched it up with a little screwdriver. Get all that old gasket sealer out of there and any trash and junk and corrosion. So we're going to go ahead and reinstall this. Angle you guys down there. You can see a little better. Okay. We're going to start with this side. Feel around the edges, make sure the gasket hasn't come displaced. Feels like it's on there. Let's thread in some bolts to keep it in place. Alright, the valve cover bolts get torqued to 4 Newton meters. The two that hold on the PCV cover get torqued to 2 Newton meters. But I'm going to apply the gasket sealer to the PCV cover, which is right here. So I got this cleaned off. Make sure you clean out the little PCV vent hole here. Sometimes they get plugged up. It's kind of a small hole. Some people opt to drill it out a little bit bigger, but I'm just going to leave this at the stock size and clean it out real good. So next I'm going to apply the RTV gasket on the outside and inside parts of this cover. And then we're going to go ahead and mate it up to the valve cover, and then we'll go and torque all the bolts down. So I'll be right back after that. Alright, so I got the RTV applied. You don't need much, just a little. And we're going to go ahead and set it on there. Just like that. And the replacement bolts are 4mm Allen head. Torque wrench is preset, 2 Newton meters. All right, really doesn't take a lot of torque on these 2 bolts here. The gasket sealer is what makes the seal on this piece. These just kind of hold it in place. The rest of these are 4 Newton meters, and I'll go ahead and start from the middle and work my way out in the circular pattern and get those torqued down, and then I'll be right back. Alright, so these are all torqued down. Next is going to be move on to the other side. Same procedure. And in that process over there, I'm going to wind up replacing more of the PCV hoses, because some of them run under here. This one goes down into here. I'll probably have to take this mass airflow sensor off. I'll show you how to do that if I need to do that. And then the others are mostly over in this area. So, all right, I've decided to just go ahead and wrap up this side. I'll install the coil packs back in here. I don't have a torque setting for these bolts, but I usually just make them snug. I mean, it really doesn't need to be overly tightened. It is going into a magnesium valve cover, so you really don't want to strip that out. This is about how tight I'm going to make them. It's about a quarter turn after hand tight, if that. Really not putting much force on this ratchet at all. Alright, so these are installed. I'll just go ahead and connect the connectors. If you're wondering, yeah, the tabs did break off on all of these. If it becomes an issue for you, then I suggest you get a replacement coil pack harness. I'm not sure if Mercedes still sells them, but there might be an aftermarket option out there. Move that out of the way so I know it's disconnected. Okay, now I'm going to go on to the other side. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and start removing the PCV cover from the driver's side. I do not suggest using an impact driver to install the bolts on any of this stuff that we're working on, but to remove them, it should be fine. Now always remember that the longer bolts go to the PCV cover. Okay, be very careful prying on this if you need to pry on it. using as little force as possible, and I'm not staying in one spot too long. All right, there we go, it's loose. These hoses are a lot stiffer than the other side. How that hose just snapped right off. And the other side, same thing. So these definitely need to be replaced. I suggest having them on hand if you're going to do this job, because chances of them being brittle are pretty high. Alrighty, now you can see inside of the PCV cover. Looks like we might have to move some of this wiring loom out of the way. Okay, that goes back there, that one goes back there. Yeah, we might just disconnect this wire loom and move it out of the way. Alright, I'll be back in a minute. Okay, I was able to get all the PCV hoses out. The driver's side was very brittle. As you can see, we broke one here. This is that 3 or 4-way connector. A piece broke off of it when I was trying to remove it, and it came from down here. So be careful when you're taking it off. Try to pull upwards as much as possible, not twist around, because that's how I broke this off. But I was able to get it out of the manifold. And up here is where your evap hose goes. It plugs into here, so pull that out before you try messing with this. In between these joints here are little barb fittings. You'll see them, I have them. Bought some replacements. This goes to the passenger side, this goes to the driver's side. And then this was the hose that was connected to the intake manifold directly to the valve cover. And as you can see, it was kind of difficult to get off. It was very hard and brittle. I'll show you where these connect on the vehicle. So that 4-way connected right here, and the PCV was attached to that, or the evap, which is this hose right here. It goes all the way over to this relay switch here, and the larger hose connected down there. Let's see if I can get. It's pretty much right here, right under this hose. You'll see it when you take it out. To get the mass airflow sensor off, there was a bracket that attaches to these 2 points right here, and then this clip. So you push this clip back, you pull it up a little and detach these 2 brackets. I'll show you on the sensor itself. So it was in the vehicle like this. These are the 2 that attach to these studs right here. And obviously the electrical connector, you should know how to remove that. And then back here, right there is where that little clip, that metal clip right here, was holding it in on the back side. And as you'll notice, there's a gasket on here. This gasket sits down in here first. And you'll see a couple of little cutouts where the nubs on this gasket sit into. So you'll put this in first, then you'll put your mass airflow sensor back in. And it will go in like that. Like that, okay? All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and assemble the new hoses and show you what that looks like. And then I will return in a minute. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and start assembling this PCV hose system so that you can have a reference whenever you go to put it back on your car. If you notice, there are little marks here. This one's a triangle, so these 2 connect together. And then on this side, you've got squares, and those 2 go together. And then this one, for the passenger side, has 2 circles. Those go together. And in between them are going to be these little union fittings. And to help us assemble this, we're going to go ahead and use some silicone spray. Make things go a little bit easier. Okay, there you go. That's that piece. And the next one should be really simple. Just makes 2 connections, one here and one here. Get it lubricated. All right. The next step will be fishing those hoses through each side and attaching it there, and then putting the mass airflow sensor back on. I also had to disconnect some zip ties that were holding this wire harness cover on. It also has clips here and down here. Just push them in and pull it up. Don't force it, it might break on you. You don't want that to happen. But that's what I'll do next. And I still have to clean the valve cover and get that prepared and ready for our new gaskets. So I'll check back in with you then. Okay. So I did need to disconnect the fuel line back here. It's a 17 millimeter. That made it easier to get the valve cover on. But now I'm ready to go ahead and start torquing down the PCV cover bolts. I'm going to go ahead and connect the PCV hoses to the valve cover here. And this hose is held up here underneath this harness. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and put the zip ties on. There's a big one back here, and then there's a small one that loops around this connector right here that goes under the wires and holds this top piece down over that side. Alright, I'm going to show you the PCV setup back here. And down here, right where the tip of my finger is this larger hose that goes over here. Note how it routes under the fuel line and then goes straight back to your intake. On this side, this one comes up here and goes like this and connects to this side. So now it's time to reconnect the mass airflow sensor. let you guys see me do that. Now remember, gasket goes in first. And line it up with the little tabs that are built into the gasket and cut out on the intake manifold. There you go. It's sitting in there nicely. And there's a hook right here for your PCV line that we just installed. Get this lined up. And gently push it in. Okay, one problem we have is this collar came unlocked. So the tab right there needs to be over the other side. Let's make sure this is in the right orientation. And probably need a screwdriver to push that over. There you go. That's what you want it to look like. These two tabs are connected. Okay, so a couple clicks later and it's in there. It's not going anywhere. Okay, so go ahead and reconnect your mass airflow sensor wire. Okay. go ahead and get these coil packs reinstalled, the wires connected. Same process as the other side I showed you. And then should be ready to put some tools away and put the air cleaner back on and start it up. Just let the gasket sealer sit there for, I want to say, at least 8 to 12 hours. But I am going to start the car up to move it out of the garage so I can close the door. But after that, I'm just going to leave it parked right outside the garage. But yeah. Okay, so closing notes. You may need to spray the manifold down with some brake cleaner to get any oil that is spilled off of there. Probably not going to get it all, so just advise the customer that it might smell like burning oil for the next hour of operation. There was a little bit on this side, but not as much. I got the coil packs connected on both sides. And I'm going to go ahead and put the air cleaner back on and the air cleaner tubes. Okay, now I'm going to go start the car. I'm going to prime the key about 2 or 3 times because I did have to disconnect the fuel rail. That should prime up the fuel to the injectors, and then I'll go ahead and start the vehicle. No engine lights. All right, and that's all she wrote.